everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on rashpixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and I am here with Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, Pete Wright. Hello, everyone.
How are you, Nikki Kinzer?
I'm good.
Have you been working out?
No, but I'm going to this afternoon.
That's good.
And the reason we're laughing at that is because I was just telling Pete I called Comcast this morning to add a fitness channel, and we couldn't figure out how to pronounce it. Guillaume. And neither one of us had it right. And then at the end of the call, so we're kind of laughing about it, right? And then at the end of the call, she says, so, okay, in about an hour, you'll be able to have, access to over 200 hours of fitness. And I'm like, great. So that means that pretty much I have to work out today. And she's like, yep, pretty much.
And not for all 200 hours.
No.
I mean, let's not get crazy. That's pretty funny.
So yes, I'm working out today. Yes.
That's good for you. It's good for you. Makes you stronger.
And I have 200 hours to choose from. Like, I have lots of choices now. There's no excuses.
I'm proud of you. That's good.
Thank you.
That's good. We're going to be talking about, we got a listener call, and that's inspired many responses today, Overwhelm and prioritizing tolerations and all sorts of good stuff. But before we do that, head over to takecontroladhd.com and get to know us a little bit better. You can listen to the show right now on the website, or you can subscribe to the mailing list right there on the homepage and get an email each week when the latest episode goes live. You can connect with us on Twitter or Facebook at Take Control ADHD and call us like this great listener did today. Leave us a voicemail at 503-664-4ADD and get your voice, your thoughts, your questions on this show. We really do love hearing from you. All right, so first we want to start off with a little bit of follow-up from last week.
Yes. I just want to clarify a little bit about where I stated last week that I disagreed with you, because it's not that I really disagree with you. I agree with everything that Pete said about tolerations and what I've said about tolerations. Taking the donations out, fixing the stove, all of those things are tolerations. And no one needs to feel obligated to go any bigger or deeper than that if they don't want to. Where I think I've changed my opinion a little bit from where I was 2 years ago to what I said last week is just the definition of what I see a toleration being. And that's expanded for me. And it probably stems from my coaching, just being a coach for the last 2 years and seeing people come to me with their tolerations and seeing, some big ones and some small ones. And, it's just really how you define the word. There isn't any right or wrong here. And so I just kind of wanted to throw that out there that, whether you call it a toleration, a project, it really doesn't matter. I think our point in talking about this stuff is just to recognize that when something's not making you happy, let's figure out what do you need to do to change it?
Well, I can certainly see that. I think that I've been thinking about this week as we've been talking about it kind of in back channels. And I think the question I would have for you, when we talk about my sort of more limited definition of a toleration compared to yours, which is expanding, I'm having trouble seeing what a toleration is not for you. Because if really, anything could become a toleration, then what are the limits on your definition of tolerations?
I don't know if I have any, to be honest with you. I don't know if they're clear, cut to be, that's a great question. It would be something I'd have to think about. I really don't know if I have clear limits. It's just not as black and white for me, I guess, is that, and maybe it goes to priorities, like how much it's bothering you. Maybe that would be where I would kind of draw the line. If it really doesn't bother me, but it's a project that I have to do, then maybe that's not really a toleration to me. It's just something that I don't care about.
Well, and that's certainly that's something you don't care about. Well, and I think that's an important thing. I think the degree of care and the degree of pain that it is causing you is an important part of the definition. For me, the knobs, I found a solution around the knobs of my oven, which is pliers. And you know what? It worked really, really well. That was a solution that got by, and it saved me from having to do something. It's ridiculous. It is a ridiculous solution to a problem that is fixable and that ended up taking just a little bit of research and a few phone calls until the oven eventually died. But it worked. And that became a toleration because I began to tolerate the ridiculousness of it. That for me is really central to this definition. At which point do I begin to tolerate how ridiculous this thing is in my life and the pain that it's causing me, and grow numb to it. So that's the limit for me. Because it was just easy. It's easy to go blind to it. But it actually gets to the question that comes from the wonderful Heather from Pennsylvania.
Yes, because she asks if there's a third category.
Let's hear from Heather.
Hey, Pete and Nikki. This is Heather calling from Pennsylvania. I have another category that I put in there, which are things that you've committed to doing on a regular basis, and then have become that kind of procrastination thing that you can never seem to get it done. And it's, at the back of your mind is that wallpaper all the time hanging over you that, I made this commitment to do this, and I haven't been keeping up. And sometimes for me, it's a commitment that I've made to other people that may not be, life or death. But, I've told my extended family that I'm going to make a family newsletter 4 times a year. And I did it for many years. And then life got too busy and I wasn't able to keep up with it anymore. And so I have all this information I've collected from family members that I have not done anything with yet. Or sometimes it's something that you've committed to yourself. Like I like to review every book that I read on Goodreads, or I like to fill out a certain survey to record my thoughts about the year every year on New Year's, and I've gotten behind on those. And I think having ADHD, we kind of tend to fall into these things because we don't have a good sense of how much of time things are going to take, so we make commitments that we can't keep. And also we get really excited about a project the first time we do it, but then when you're trying to do it on a regular basis, it's not as exciting anymore. It's not as novel anymore. So I'm just wondering if you all have any advice. Would you consider those category of things to be tolerances? And what is the solution? Is the solution to make yourself do it and get it done, to build a routine around getting it done, or is it to get out of these commitments that you've made that you've overbooked yourself and kind of find a graceful way to wrap it up and not just leave it hanging?
So in my opinion, I definitely see this as being a toleration. She asks us, Pete and I, what our opinion is for a solution, and she offers 3, solutions. And, I think that my least favorite solution is making yourself do it. Right? I mean, what do you think?
Oh, it's horrible. That causes my gut such great pain.
Yeah, like I heard her say that. I'm like, no, that's not a good choice. That's not, because that's just not a fun way to live, right?
Yeah, there are things that fit into that category that cause my gut pain and I have to do. And those things are like my taxes.
Exactly.
Like those, I don't want to associate things that deal with like people that I love, like my family, in this case, she mentions this quarterly family newsletter or something like that. I don't want that to fall in the same category as taxes.
No, I agree.
That's painful.
And it's just an uphill battle because everything that she was talking about, the procrastination and, all of that's just going to be worse because you're feeling forced, and that's just not a good way to live. I think that the routine could have some merit to it if it's still something that you're interested in doing. So if she's still kind of interested in the family newsletter, but, feels like maybe she's taken too much with it being quarterly, is there a way to maybe tweak the expectations? So instead of having it quarterly, could she do it just annually, or maybe not make it as detailed, or even delegate pieces of it to other family members if that would help her? But anything to kind of decrease some of the pressure, but still make it fun for you, then I think a routine could certainly help. The third option, getting out of the commitment is probably where I would lean if it's really something that's bothering you and is just weighing you down. I think that if it was me, that's probably what I would end up doing, because we get to choose how we need and want to spend our time. And if this isn't working for her, I would just respectfully get out of the commitment. I would let the people know what's going on. I would be open and honest and transparent about it. And I think you have to kind of be at a point where you're okay if you disappoint someone, because I have no idea anything about her family, but, if she has that mother-in-law or that mother or that sister who's like, but you have to, that's pressure.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be okay with maybe disappointing someone.
There is this concept of sort of not letting it land on you, their emotional response to their disappointment in you. It's not your disappointment, right? It's not yours to own. And if you can sort of build up that callous, and I don't mean become calloused, but build up that callous to not let someone else's garbage land on you, then you're kind of in a much better place, a much more stable place, I think. But if there's anything, I mean, I think you just nailed it. Like, change the scope of the project if it's something that is important to you, or get out of it. Like, there are all sorts of wonderful solutions to automating, to thinking creatively about taking contributions from other family members so you don't have to write it. I love that you bring up delegation, technological solutions. Is it really a newsletter? Does that involve printing? Can you just do it online? Like, what would save you time to sort of grease the skids to get it done if it's important to you? But if it's not, it is so much better to be honest and clear with the people that are counting on you and tell them you're not going to be able to live up to this expectation and you need to let it go, than to just sit there and let everybody else think that you're still thinking about it when really you're not. The only thing you're thinking about when you think about it is the pain that it's causing you that you're not doing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
And it's not even at that point, it's not even a toleration for me, because you never really go numb to it. Right?
Yeah.
It falls out of that category. If it's something that's just there and is absorbed into your life, then it's a toleration. If it's not, it becomes a real stress. It becomes a project that you're not able to make good on. And that's different. That's a problem. And that causes you, emotional and eventually physical stress. Don't let that pile up.
Absolutely. I agree. Very much so. Well, and then later, I would say now this is a different question that was asked via email. Somebody had asked, saying that, I have so many projects, I have so much clutter and so many tolerations. How do I get from a place of overwhelm toward a place of feeling more in control and progressing forward? And I thought, well, what a great topic for a podcast. What a great follow-up, right?
I love it.
This is a little bit about what we talked about last week too, with some of the things that were coming up for you, with when do I have time, to plan this trip that I want to do. And we kind of talked about priorities a little bit. And so I'm not going to necessarily, I guess we will talk a little bit about priorities, but I just have a few tips for people to kind of get out of the overwhelm when you're dealing with, all of this clutter, projects, tolerations. And I think for me, the first thing that I do is I need to identify what I'm feeling. So if I am overwhelmed, and especially with my anxiety, I need to sit there and just say, you know what? I am feeling this way. And I can feel it in my stomach. I lose my appetite. I'm jumpy. I'm really unsettled. And I have to just take a second. And I'll even tell my husband, I'm feeling anxious and I can't figure out why, or I need to figure out why. And I can usually you do kind of figure it out. What's nagging you, and then you kind of can figure out what you need to do to deal with it. With these projects and tolerations, I think that one of the key things you can do right away is do a brain dump. And we've talked about this before in just general productivity, with tasks and getting things done, is you got to get it out of your head and onto paper. And one of the common complaints I hear or concerns, really not even a complaint, it's a concern that I hear from clients, is they're so worried that they're going to forget about something.
Oh, yes.
And so this is one way to sort of trap everything that's in your head onto paper. And if you do think of something later on, you can always add to the list, right?
Right.
It's never just definite. But definitely that's the first step, is just get it out on paper. And then I think when it comes to projects or tolerations, or even spaces that you want to declutterize, you got to prioritize the top 3. So you're taking this master list and you're looking at what is the most important thing to you right now. And, whenever we talk about priorities, the first thing I always tell people is look at your hard deadlines. That's a clear-cut priority. Right? Taxes.
Yes. Yeah.
April 15th. That's a hard deadline. If you've got people coming over to your house or you have a party planned, that's a hard deadline. So really look at those things to kind of prioritize what those top 3 things are. Look at how other people are affected by what is on your list. And, you can also kind of think about what would be the most impactful, not only to them, but for you. And what's the easiest to tackle so that you feel good? Because I want to get you out of the overwhelm. And so pick something that's just easy and that will make you feel good. So that at the end of the evening, you can say, I'm moving forward.
I like it. It's funny. I want to step back just a bit to the identify it and brain dump stages, because I think they're so important. My experience, and again, others' experience with sort of dealing with their ADHD and anxiety are obviously unique. And so, but I can tell you my experience. When I start feeling that sort of that fidgety, that sort of, oh my gosh, there's something sitting in my stomach and I can't figure out what it is. As soon as I start to write, and I write all the things that come top of mind, there is invariably one thing that is really hard to write down. It's the one thing that is like a force of nature preventing my pen from hitting the paper and writing that next bullet. And that's the thing that's causing the lump in my stomach. That's the thing that I want to keep in my head and sort of cherish it. Maybe I'm afraid I'm not going to forget it. Maybe it's important. Maybe I'm scared to do it. Maybe I need to learn something before I do it. I don't have confidence that I'm going to be able to do it to a level of quality that I experience. But that's the thing that's causing me the stress. And I have to find a way to write it down. And I really believe, at least for me, that's a muscle. You have to exercise that muscle, and why it is so important to make a regular, weekly, if not daily effort to brain dump. We've talked before, I try to do it every day in a daily review. At the end of the day, I review what's in my head, what's on my list, get it into OmniFocus, organized for the next day. But if I let it sit and simmer, it will build up, and it'll be the thing that's nearly impossible to write.
Interesting.
It takes a lot of effort to get that out of my pen. And so it's really a powerful step to make a brain dump a regular part of my routine. So
I have a question for you then, because my next step is, after you prioritize those top 3 projects, it seems natural then to break those projects down into action steps. But I'm curious to know that when you actually put that project that you are avoiding down on paper, how do you break it down to action steps? What is your process to make that happen for you?
Well, I go into, I do it all in OmniFocus. Once I get the list out, I go into the sort of OmniFocus is very nice sort of outline view, and I put the major projects as major tasks, and then I can indent subtasks underneath those major projects. Once I get the major projects on paper, the things that I'm struggling with figuring out, the subtext tasks usually come pretty quickly, and I can just type, return, type, return, and just end up with a list of things that I know will contribute to achieving that top line goal. So
that piece of it doesn't bother you.
Not at all.
You're not at a roadblock there. Yeah.
No, actually, breaking things down is something that I've gotten pretty good at. But it's getting over the hump of anxiety and stress about not having my brain cleared.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really important connection, right? Like, part of the reason it's so hard to break down big tasks into actions is that your brain isn't clear to do it. And in my experience, once I'm able to get all the big stuff out, the knots out of my stomach, my brain is clear and much more creative and adaptable and able to clear out the cruft and get the actual work documented pretty easily.
Well, and as you're talking about that, what comes to my mind is you've almost now accepted that, yes, that project that I was sort of avoiding, it's here now. I've accepted this. And so the next steps for you, like you said, come pretty naturally. One thing that I've seen is that it doesn't always come natural for everyone. And so I would recommend that if it doesn't come natural for you, that it is okay to get a different perspective. Get somebody that's outside of the project and talk to them about it. This is what I want to do. I'm not exactly sure what the first step is or what the next step is. And having somebody else kind of work through that with you can certainly help break those things down so that you do know clearly what it is that you need to do. Because procrastination, a lot of times what happens is because you don't know what the next step is. And we will talk about procrastination next week, so I don't want to go into great detail about it right now. But a lot of times that's where the paralysis is.
I totally agree. It's funny. I have, I'm when I teach at the university here, I one of the tips I give to writers is a tip that was given to me 20 years ago by an editor that I still use quite regularly, and it's something that reminds me of the body double that we talk about regularly on the show. It's this idea that if you have an essay that you've written and you really want to catch, you really want to edit it. Sometimes when you read your own work, you can't figure it out. You can't catch everything, all the mistakes. So you give it to another person and just ask them to read it. Don't ask them to proofread it. Just ask them to read it aloud to you. And by doing that, when you hear them trip, when you hear them fall reading your words, when you hear them repeat themselves, when you hear them slow down, you have something to work on. You have something to edit. I think that tool, that process, that sort of step of having that outside perspective is the same thing in this case. Sitting down and saying, look, I have this major bit of work and I just need you to reflect on it. I don't need you to prioritize for me. I don't need you to I don't need you to come up with additional work for me. I just need you to just look at this task list, read this task list out loud, and let me know, I'm going to be able to hear it. When I hear your voice reading it, it'll be outside of my own head voice. I'll be able to make some more clear assessments of my own work. I think that's a really interesting step.
No, it's great. Great. It's a great tool to use, especially in writing. I love that.
Yeah, because you're not asking anybody for judgment. You're just asking for the use of their voice.
Yeah, hearing it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and the last thing that I want to talk about, which I think is so important, because whenever you're talking about overwhelm, stress, anxiety, all of that stuff, we have to look at how we're taking care of ourselves. And that is like the last thing that people do. It's like we are so easy to put ourselves last. But when you are feeling this overwhelm and anxiety, then, my question would be just check yourself. What are your stress management techniques and tools? And if you don't have any, you got to find some. It's that important, so because it's just a bad thing, right? We all know that. But take a few seconds to just breathe. This is so simple, and you've probably have read it in a million different places, but just get yourself back in the present moment. Take a few deep breaths, remind yourself you can only do one thing at a time. You're doing the best you can. If meditation is something you like to do, that's a great way to center yourself. Exercise, drinking water, grabbing a healthy snack, and one of the things that I want to point out, you and I have been working on a project for the last couple of weeks. And one of the things that you suggested when we were in between our work was to take a break and actually go outside. And we did that. And we would, take a few breaths of fresh air, talk about the flowers, whatever, and then get back into work. And that makes us such a big difference. And I've been telling people now, especially the students that I work with, that when you're studying, take a break. But that doesn't mean that you go onto Facebook or you check your email. It means you get out from your seat, you walk outside, you take a couple of breaths, you walk around a little bit, and then you go back inside. And just to see the difference that does for you. Because transferring your attention or focus from one device to the other is not really what we're talking about.
Right. That's not a break. That's ridiculous. It's not a break. Yeah, I'm so glad that works for you.
It does. And I just want to say thank you, Pete, because now I do it. I did it yesterday because right now we have beautiful weather here in the Northwest. And I've been working on a project that's, definitely chaining me to my computer. And so I've been walking outside and thinking of you.
Oh, that's awesome.
Flowers. Yeah. So
that's awesome.
I want to share that with our listeners because I think it's important. So.
Well, I think that's a relatively new tool for me in my bag of tricks. But I love it. I love the idea of changing contexts. I think it really helps me not to completely exhaust focus on whatever it is I need to work on. The other thing that I kind of related to that is to work in sprints. And that's something that I don't think that we're all that good at as people yet either. There's this thing that there's a sense that when you have a giant project, you just need to muscle through it and get it done, and you keep your laptop open all day and all night until you get finished. And when I find that I'm able to break up the work into tasks that are small enough that I can actually achieve them in 15 to 20 minutes, and then take 3 minutes to walk around outside, then I'm much more efficient at achieving all the tasks over time. So perforating the work that way
is a great ADHD strategy that I've learned in my coaching training. And so I'm glad you bring that up, because that I think is really good for the ADHD brain.
Amen to that, sister.
Yeah. Sprints. That's good. All right. So that's it for
right?
tonight. Yeah, or for today.
Excellent. Tonight.
It's in the morning when we're recording this.
Don't forget to tip your servers.
That's right.
This has been awesome. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Don't forget to give us a ring, 503-664-4ADD, and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next week on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.